Notts County Talk. It's our second live match preview. We're delighted to be joined by Charlie Slater. Of course, you all know Charlie, fantastic commentator on the games and keeping us up to date at the minute with all that's going on. Charlie, how are you?
Doing all right, yeah, not too bad, Still fortunate to be getting to see the games, albeit they ain't been great of late, but still fortunate to be doing them.
Yeah, brilliant. So we're going to go on. We're going to just dive straight into it, and we're going to just have a chat about the Boreham Wood game. Tricky one to analyse. It looked like it was going to be another poor result. What did you sort of make of it as you were watching it?
It looked like one of the poorer performances. I mean, that the first half they were completely off it. They were off it. There've been a few games lately where they have been off it. I think it was the Halifax game at home where the ball goes out to the left-hand side and it's miscontrolled on that far side. I think maybe by Jordan Barnett, but apologies if it wasn't him. And that was the second touch of the game, and it went wrong from there. It took a little bit longer for it to go wrong at Boreham Wood, but it looked poor. It was poor, and in the second half, when they first came out, that first sort of 10-15 minutes of the second half, I'm thinking, oh God, it's getting worse. And so when the second goal goes in, you start thinking, this rot's setting in a little bit, and you do worry. I think I said in the goal commentary after it, I'm like, if they can't figure this out, if they can't turn this around, then crikey, you start thinking. I'd always assumed that they'd just make the playoffs. They'd make the playoffs, but I started looking at it, going, "Oh, if they can't turn this around soon, then who knows?" But great credit to them. In fairness, they get a draw out of the game. I said they snatched a draw from the jaws of defeat, which is what they did, and I hope that gives them a little bit of something to them. The fact that they can. These are not bad players. They're not bad players. There's a lot of them out of form right now, and so you just hope that you get the opportunity with rescuing a point like that. And in fairness to them, they won last weekend. If they win tomorrow against Yeovil, they'll have taken 7 points from 9, and you start thinking, well, that's not bad going, and maybe that's then something to build on. It's a big if, obviously, they've got to beat Yeovil. But yeah, Tuesday night against Boreham Wood, it was another poor performance. I don't think anybody's shying away from that. But they still managed to get a draw out of it, and that gives them something to build on, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's quite worrying. I mean, for me, I've been a Notts fan for as long as I can remember. To be watching Notts at the moment as playing as they are, I mean, when you look at statistically, it doesn't look too bad. But when you watch the games, the performances they're just dull, aren't they? Like, we don't seem to have anything to offer. And those games at the start of the season where we've not picked up as many goals as we should have and as many points as we should have, I think it's really going to show at the end of the season. So yeah, worrying times. And I think Yeovil are a good side, very good side.
Yeah, what I think is there was excuses at the start of the season about momentum, and I think, not like you said, Charlie, Notts will go. Playoffs was a given at least. It seemed like it, and this momentum excuse, everyone just sort of believed it, and now there's not the excuse anymore. And I just think, are we just inconsistent? Are we just? It's not just how it is this season. Are we just not a side that can push it constantly? And I don't know what the issue is with that.
It's odd, isn't it? The expectations are higher because of the division that Notts are playing in. This is not the worst that any of us have ever seen Notts County play football. It's far from it. Far from it. It's just that the expectations are different. That they're playing in the National League. They got so close to getting promoted at the first port of call at the first attempt last year. When they didn't, you assumed that they would kick on and go one better, in the same way that they assumed that would do after losing out in the playoffs to Coventry. You just assume the next season they'll come back and they'll be stronger again. Early on in the season, the very much the mantra from Neil Ardley, from Michael Doyle, from other players, was there's no excuses this season. But then as the season's panned out and there's been loads of disruption and things like that, I guess there are some excuses that you could then start throwing in the mix. But there are excuses that kind of apply to a lot of teams in the division as well. Every team's going through it. Every team's got this congested fixture list coming up now. And as they approach the remainder of this season, are they going to have a real go? Like, they've sorted things out largely defensively. And over the last couple of games, it's looked a little shaky at times. Not, in fairness, not at at Wealdstone. But, you know, obviously against Halifax and against Kings Lynn and against Boreham Wood as well, it's looked a little shaky at that end. But it's, yeah, as you were just saying a minute ago, George, it's what can they do at the other end? What can they figure out? Because at the moment it feels like there's a real reliance on Kyle Wootton to score the goals. And when he doesn't score, then it's always going to be difficult. So you need to start seeing players in other areas of the pitch pitching in with goals. And as a team, they're not as good as they were last season going forwards, without a shadow of a doubt. I think they're better defensively, but going forwards, they're certainly not. And that's because they lost Christian Dennis, they lost Wes Thomas, and they basically lost Kyle Roberts for the season as well.
For me, Dennis is the biggest. Dennis would be that man that the ball would be pinging around the box, and he would always be in that spot, always, and he just put it away, or he's actually very good from outside the box as well. I remember, I think it was Charlie at home when Notts won 5-1. He's finished from outside the box. I knew that was going to be an issue. I didn't think it'd be this big, but it's also amplified with Kyle Roberts as well, which is not great.
One thing I also think could be affecting things this season is, I think last season, obviously, there's that expectation like we spoke about, but obviously the way the season started, we didn't have a pre-season. We signed like 6 or 7 players a couple of days before the start of the season. So in that respect, I do feel like there's obviously still pressure there, but I don't think there's as much pressure as there is this season to perform and get that promotion. So I think that is definitely one factor.
Do you guys think, because I talk to a lot of footballers in a lot of different levels, and they keep coming back, and I was chatting to Lewis Graben yesterday, and he was talking about the lack of fans and how that's really impacted Forest, because they have one of the older squads in the league, whereas some of the younger squads who are less accustomed to playing in front of big crowds are doing better. Yeah. Notts have got a lot of experienced players in that team. Like, I mean, if I went through the team from the other night, so you've got 32, 29, 32, 27, 28, 39, 27, 33, 24, 29 years old. Those are the ages of some of the players that were playing for Notts the other night. And I wonder if it's having a bearing as well, even though the crowds are lower in the National League, whether it's still relative. And I wonder whether or not that's having a bearing on Notts County, because they get the biggest crowd in the division. Maybe I'm coming up with an excuse where they actually shouldn't get an excuse, but I just wonder, all I keep getting told is it's having a bearing at higher levels. I wonder if you guys think it's actually having an impact at Notts level as well.
I've never looked at the squad like that. Sorry, George. When you read out ages like that, it's got to have an effect, hasn't it? It's got to.
Maybe.
I think so.
I'm trying to throw it out there.
I think as well with Notts, I mean, I know we are in the lower leagues and we don't get anywhere near sort of the higher leagues attendances, but we do have fairly high attendance. Well, we have the highest attendance in this league, average attendance from last season. And I think if you look into League Two, we'd probably be second or third in that. So I think obviously we do have a big following, we get the attendances. So I do think that is a big factor, because a lot of the team has stayed pretty similar from last season, hasn't it, really?
Also, if you look at like just the fact that regardless of like age of the players, if these performances are being played in front of fans, they wouldn't be having it, and they'll be on their backs. If Kings Lynn scored that goal that they scored 2 minutes into the game, and fans are there, I know the response was there, but I think they would have carried on for the whole game. I don't think the players would let up at all.
I think that's right. And I think that's the thing is that we've seen Notts start slowly on a number of occasions. And that's because, and it's another thing that Graben was saying, he said, like, without fans being there, you don't see the players until you're stood next to them on the pitch for the first time. So there's no opportunity to get that adrenaline pumping beforehand, because usually you'd see them in the tunnel. You'd stand next to them in the tunnel, you'd eyeball them, you'd feel that adrenaline, one person standing next to another, trying to stop the other one from eating today. And I just want, maybe one of the reasons why they're starting slowly is because there's nothing to kickstart the adrenaline, you know. And you just mentioned a few moments ago, like the big crowds, like as far as the National League, it's all relative. National League, League Two, Notts County, as you said, got one of the bigger attendances, one of the bigger crowds. And you look at the home form this season, and I mean, overall, forgive me while I glance at my magic book with all the notes in it for the weekend. You know, when you look at the home form, they've still got the 4th best home form in the league this season, with 23 points from 14. though they've not won at Meadow Lane in their last 3 games, and they've won 2 in their last 7 home games and 3 in their last 9. Obviously, the home form has tailed off considerably as the away form's picked up.
I also think the wins, we can't obviously answer that, and we're not the players. The wins feel as big because when we beat Stockport at home 1-0, I feel like the players would have been in front of the cop at full time, fist pumping. The fans would have been absolutely singing them home to get that win, and then you could have carried that into the next game. But there's not. Yes, it was a fantastic win against Stockport, but do they feel what the fans felt at home? They can't. So. Fans are a massive issue.
That's true. Absolutely. That is true. And again, it is the same for everybody. It's the same for all the other clubs too. But like, you mentioned a few moments ago, just like Notts with one of the bigger attendances in the league, perhaps it's impacting them more. Again, referencing what Lewis Grabban was saying, maybe it affects them more as well because they've got a slightly older squad who playing in front of nobody at all is more alien to than perhaps a younger squad where they've just come out of academy football and they're used to playing in front of nobody.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, though. I've never really thought of it like that. Never really looked into the average age of squads and stuff like that have an impact. But yeah, it's interesting to look at.
We've got a question from Chris Barker, and this actually leads us nicely into how we're going to talk about our lineup. So isn't it about time we picked a way to play and stuck with it? The constant chopping and changing can't be helping inexperienced players to bed in the side.
Well, I think the thing is that they did have a way of playing. They very much do have a way of playing until recently, where things have gone off the boil, and so Neil Ardley is chopping and changing, desperately trying to find a solution. They had a very set way of playing. Like you've got your 4 across the back, Doyle drops in front of the defence, picks the ball up, and they pivot from one side of the pitch to the other side and edge their way forward, commit players, beat the first wave of the press, try to get in behind it, play the balls round the corner, get the wing backs or the full backs forwards, because that's a major part of Notts County's game, is winning the full back battle. Are Notts pushing the opponent's full backs or wing backs back, or are they getting pushed back themselves? Because without the on-running full backs for Notts County, they don't have the width that they otherwise would, because otherwise they're relatively narrow going through the midfield and up into the kind of number 10 positions. So they did have a very set way of playing. But what they were coming up against more and more and more was teams that were pressing high with lots of energy and really jumping on the defenders when they picked the ball up. And unless Notts County then had the quality of passing and speed of thought on passing, then they were getting found out. It was getting a little bit nervy and things were going off the boil. That's kind of what's happened as teams figured that if you press them high with aggression, with energy from the first minute, you can kind of impact the game plan a little bit. Or so it is, in my opinion. So what has happened of late is, Neil Ardley has chopped and changed a little bit, and he does chop and change within games. That's something he's always done. If things aren't working out with a formation to start the game, he'll pretty quickly change it. And I would like to think that there's enough experience in that team to be able to adapt on the fly. And usually when he does change a formation, it does work for the better. It does benefit us. But chopping and changing at the moment, going three at the back with 2 wing backs and changing the personnel and things like that. First of all, you got a load of games, so you're going to have to change some of the personnel. And second of all, chopping and changing because he's desperately trying to find a way of getting them back on form again.
I worry about the formation if it is to stay. I prefer the way we're playing in this formation to previous. I think it's given us a little bit of freshness, but I worry, how do you fit Enzio and Rodriguez in this side? And is it a nod that Cal Roberts is possibly not going to be fit for a very long time? Because how do you fit Enzio, Roberts and Rodriguez into this formation? I don't know.
It's difficult. It's difficult. And the answer might be you don't. That might be the brutal honesty and the brutal truth of it, is that maybe you don't, because there's a tendency, I think, at all levels with all fans, and I'm guilty of it as well, of sometimes when you see a player not playing, assuming that he's a better option than the player that is playing all the time, and not taking into account that the reason why he's not playing all the time and the reason why that other guy is getting picked. You can say, take, for example, Matty Wolf in this side. Why is he not getting a run in the team? Well, maybe it's because he's not better than Michael Doyle and Jake Reeves. Just because his name isn't Doyle or Reeves doesn't mean that he's a better option. Now, that's not to say that Doyle and Reeves have been playing particularly well of late. That's just to say that they might still be the best players that Neil Ardley has available to him. And to go back to your point of, you know, Enzio Baldwin, Ruben Rodriguez, Enzio's done all right of late. You know, but they're both in and out. You know, you can't rely on either of them to be on top of their game and performing every single week. And I've even heard the tag luxury players aimed at them. And if that is the case, and I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but if that is the case, in this tough sort of run of fixtures, Saturday, Tuesday, Friday, and throwing in the mix like that, do you have to have both in the team? And I know, as far as Cal Roberts goes, a few weeks ago, I know that it looked good and he was on his way back. And then he suffered that setback at Stockport. And from him, a couple of days around the club, it then didn't look good for a while. But now it's starting to look better again. So, different. It's a very confusing injury that he's got.
Yeah, we've got another question from Anthony. We'll go into that after the lineup. So, George, you want to take us through the lineup, and Charlie, you can have a look at what we've picked. So we've discussed this earlier today. This is what we would like to see.
Obviously, we've gone Slocum in goal. I don't think you can really choose Pillin over Slocum. Dion Kelly-Evans. Now, I know Abbott was saying in his presser that he did, well, it was released earlier today, that there's a curse of the right backs at the minute. And I know Kelly-Evans didn't feature in the last game, so I'm not sure if he's picked up a knock or something like that. We're just assuming he's fit because we've not actually heard anything directly said about him. So,
I think he'll be fine for tomorrow.
Yeah, no, that's great. We love Kelly-Evans on the channel. Rawlinson, Ellis and Lacey, centre-back. Obviously, you know Ellis quite well, don't you? So we've heard.
Yeah, I know him very well. Yeah, we know we grew up together as kids and played next to each other in the middle of defence. As you may have heard, he don't remember me as a footballer. We've kept in touch since we were kids, but he doesn't remember me as a footballer, which I think says everything.
No, he's a good signing, I think.
Yeah,
he's excellent. He's a solid bloke, not afraid of anybody, not scared of mixing it up, and he has always, even as a kid, lingered and stayed forwards, and he's always had an eye for goal. You know, to the point that in the team that we played in as kids, we'd be in the middle of defence together, but periodically, sometimes he was told to, and sometimes he just had a sense of when to do it, which you saw at Wealdstone last weekend. He would just drift forward or stay forwards and sometimes play as an extra striker, which is why I knew exactly what he was doing in the lead up to that goal and said in commentary, Ellis has stayed forward like an additional striker right now. So, no, he's good, guys. Sorry, I've interrupted your team. Sorry.
No, that's fine. We've gone for sort of a 5-3-2, maybe sort of more of a 2-1 in the middle with like Doyle, O'Brien and Reeves, saying a little bit more defensive. Obviously, Miller, we've put at left, full back. I mean, well, wing back, if you will. I think he's been fitting quite well into the five at the back, though. He's impressed me. To be fair, since he's come in, he's impressed me. I think he's been a good player to bring in. So, onto the midfield. Got O'Brien and Reeves. Me and Tom sort of discuss over Doyle. I mean, I just think O'Brien brings that edge for me personally. I know they're slightly different players, but the drive and runs that he does, I feel like against, especially a team like Yeovil, I feel like that's going to help us massively.
The one thing that we did discuss, because we speak while I watch the game, don't we? Yeah. One thing that happened after the Wealdstone game is that Ardley always talks about how people had to earn their spot in the team, doesn't he? And I felt like actually O'Brien had earned his spot in the lineup against Bournemouth. I felt like he was the best, one of the best players against Wealdstone. So that I wasn't happy about that.
I was surprised too. Yeah, I thought he'd get a start at Bournemouth.
Yeah, something that really grates me, and George knows this. George defends Doyle quite a lot. I always say, I must say it 15 times a game, don't try the Hollywood pass. Because there's one against Bournemouth. He tried to bring it over the top and he took so long, closed down, and then won the break straight away. And sometimes you think, just calm it down a little bit, because if he did the simple things more often, it'll be more effective.
I think he does, though. I feel like he's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't, because I've also heard Notts fans levy the stop going sideways, go forwards, look forwards all the time. And I've heard that, and I've heard that levied at Doyle saying that he doesn't take enough risks. It's always, and Reeves, They don't take enough risks. They don't look forward quickly enough, and they don't try and do something that might unlock the defense. So it's kind of like he might be damned if he does. He might be damned if he doesn't. He's played every minute of every game, and he is one of the league leaders in completed passes. So, I think he's ranked like 4th or 5th in the entire league for completed passes. It's well over 700. So he does keep it ticking over. I see why people can sort of go, come on, give somebody else a go and that sort of stuff. But he's such a big part of keeping the team moving and driving intensity. What I did think was interesting, sorry to completely go off on a tangent, was I read the article this week in a newspaper from in Portsmouth saying that he's been approached to go down there and kind of act as some sort of intermediary, dealing with the players and things like that as a coach, because he does want to go into coaching. So I found that interesting. I saw that. I've not spoken to him about it. I've not spoken to Neil Argy about it, but I'll probably ask him about it after the game tomorrow.
Yeah. So just very quickly before you go on to who's going to sit behind the striker, George, with sort of O'Brien and Reeves, I think there's more of I don't know. I feel like Doyle cannot play every game. He can't play every game in this running. I'm sure of it. So there's got to be an opportunity when O'Brien plays well. We've got to get Reeves and O'Brien used to playing together. I mean, as I've said before, we're not footballers. We don't know. Is it just a myth that you need to get used to playing with someone? I don't know. But I feel like there's got to be, you can't just drop Doyle all of a sudden and then expect from O'Brien to just slot in that role. But.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I do think, though, in respect to that, I do feel like you need to play with someone to understand what they're going to do. And it's almost got to be like second nature to sort of have a slight understanding of what they may do next so you can change what you're going to do or adapt to what you're going to do. So I do think it is important to know. But I suppose they do train a lot together, but I know training's a lot different to
it certainly doesn't hurt, does it? It doesn't hurt. If you're playing together all the time, it doesn't hurt. And I know you're going to go onto the forwards in a moment, but that's one of the things that they've lacked this season. Last season, Wootton and Thomas for a while had a good thing going on.
Yeah, great.
They've not had that at any point this season going forwards. Wootton's had a number of different partners up there with him, and none of them have sort of put their name forwards and said, I'm the guy who's going to be up front alongside him every single week.
Yeah. So I'll move on to sitting behind the strikers. We've gone for Rodriguez. Now, I feel like Rodriguez, he's not been great of late, has he? He's not really put in a performance where he's even the last couple of games I can think that he did play in. I can't really recall him doing anything fantastic, but I feel like you've got to give sort of him and another player similar as well, Eli Sam, a little bit more time. Greg Abbott was talking about, I think it was Greg Abbott in the presser that he did, saying that these players have come in a time where they can't really, they shouldn't really be leaving their apartments. They're in a foreign country to where they were born. They don't have any friends and family around them. So it is difficult. So I think the best thing for players like that is to just get used to playing, getting into being in the starting 11. Not like game in, game out, but as often as it can be, because I feel like we've not seen the best, anywhere near the best of Rodriguez. And for Sam as well, I really like Sam. I think he could offer a lot. He just needs to sort of string a lot of games together. But
Sam's a real interesting one, don't you think? Like Sam occasionally shows these flashes of brilliance, and he shows occasionally that he can be a real handful. He's 6'5", he's big. I know he looks angry, but when you stand in front of him, he's big and he's like a rectangle. And you look at him at times and you have these moments where you think you could be a real handful. But then there are other occasions where I watch him try to control the ball and it looks like he's got 8 legs and he's trying to control them. You don't know which leg to use, So, and I agree in the sense that Rodriguez hasn't been great of late. I could be wrong here, but I'm thinking he was brilliant against Dagenham and Redbridge.
Exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's been particularly brilliant since. But I think that's very much par for the course with a player like that at this level. Because if they were doing it every week, or at least more consistency, they wouldn't be at this level. So I'm not surprised at that.
I prefer Rodriguez at home as well. I prefer him to start games at home. I think it suits him.
Great in front of the crowd.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
Strikers then, George.
For the strikers, we've gone for Wotton and Knowles. Wotton, I feel like he's just cemented his place into the team. Wouldn't surprise me if he plays every game this season at all. And Knowles, very much like you said about Sammy, just has that moment of brilliance. He's very energetic. You know, he's just youthful, isn't he? He's always trying, and I feel like him and Wotton complement each other fairly well. And we've not really seen him play that often together up front.
Let's throw this question in just before we go to Anthony's. Sorry.
No, go on.
So when do you think it'll be a good time for Lewis Knight to get a run out?
When he's fit enough.
Yeah.
And the only person who's going to know when he's fit enough is, well, Lewis Knight. And then Neil Ardley and the coaching staff. They're going to watch him every day in training, and he's going to have to show that he's ready in training before he gets a run out. I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the bench tomorrow. I think we may see him for the first time tomorrow, because he'll have had a couple of weeks of training under his belt, and he stayed behind when Notts had to go away, and he's done extra bits and bobs and things like that to get some more energy into his legs. So I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see him now. But you've got to bear in mind, he's not played for a long time, what with Bradford Park Avenue's season, being null and voided. So yeah, hopefully it won't be too long, and he might get 10 minutes or so or whatever off the bench tomorrow.
If he's got the pace we're hearing, I'm optimistic. I think he could be the partner for Wootton for the remainder of the season. If he's got the pace, even if he doesn't necessarily bag the tons of goals that we all want, if he can complement him well, I'm hopeful. I'm hoping he's another sort of Cal Roberts that's coming from.
Well, that's the interesting thing, yeah, because Cal Roberts came in and he did so well that when Notts made this signing, I thought, well, everybody's going to make the leap and say, he's this season's Cal Roberts. And when Neil Ardley mentioned him when he first signed, in the same breath as Cal Roberts, that surprised me, because I thought, well, there's some pressure.
Yeah, I'm hoping he can come in and be that player. So that's our lineup. I'd love to see that tomorrow. I don't know if we will. I think it'll be Reeves and Doyle in the middle again, but either way, we're going to have to back them. So Anthony sent this question a while ago, and I thought it sort of linked after we looked at the side. So the energy and aggression is something we're lacking. If we play that side tomorrow, for me, that's, is it the best? Is it the best we've got? It's not quite the best.
Do you know
Yeovil, aren't they?
In terms of aggression, I think the two players highest on my list is Kelly Evans and Doyle. They bring the highest level of aggression, I think, in the team.
I don't think we lack. Yeah, we don't lack aggression. Like, as a team, it's not about being aggressive. It's about being aggressive and intelligent, being aggressive in the right ways. Yeah, we as a team do not lack aggression. You know, Dion Kelly Evans is uber aggressive. Mark Ellis is aggressive. Wasn't so much as a kid, but he is now.
Kelly Evans
Rawlinson. Yeah, Kelly. I think I said in commentary, I was like, Dion Kelly Evans would punch Mike Tyson in 1986 if he had the opportunity to. He wouldn't back down. Conor Rawlinson is aggressive, is a warrior. Jordan Barnett is not afraid to mix it. Neither's Miller. Doyle, we know, is as game as it comes. Jim O'Brien's a nutter. You know, like, plenty of aggression. Like, I mean that in the nicest way. There's plenty of aggression. The energy thing, I think, Anthony may be onto something, in the sense that the energy might be a bit depleted. It's understandable. So yeah, he might be onto something there. But I don't think we lack aggression. It's just got to be controlled aggression and used in the right way. It's not about just like, I'm going to stand on someone or stick my head in or something like that. It's controlled aggression with the way that you go about your game, and controlling your energy as well to go with that, and not just wasting it on silly acts of aggression, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll go on to our predictions for the score then. George, I'll let you go first for this one.
Yeah, so I'm going for a win, as 99.9% of the time I always do in my previews.
I'm sure it's 100%. I'm sure it's 100%.
I pulled a draw out the other week. I can't remember who it was against. But
I
did pull a draw out. It might have been, yeah. But yeah, I'm going 2-1 Notts. I think Reeves and Knowles to pick up the goals. Knowles just always seems to chip in, doesn't he? I think more so when we're obviously playing a little bit better. I think I can't remember who it was we played against, but the last game he played, he was a little bit, I don't know, didn't really see much from him, did we? So I'm hoping we see a little bit more from him if he does play tomorrow. But it's going to be a tight game, I think. Either way, it's going to be very tight. We always seem to struggle against Yeovil as well, I think.
Yeah, we don't really like Yeovil too much, do we?
No.
I think it sparks
Just looking
back
at all
to
the notes.
Yeah. Yes, Yeovil. I just remember going down to 9 men in the trophy, and wasn't Kelly Evans kicking off with Cole Dickinson?
Yeah, each other's throats.
Kelly Evans kicks off with everyone, but okay, so 2-1. I'd be more than delighted with a win tomorrow, especially back to back. I'm dreaming here, but if we were to pick 6 points off in these 2 games, that would be incredible. I think it would be really difficult. So I have gone for a 1-0 win, and I've already mentioned I think Rodriguez at home. I also agree in front of fans. I think he'd be even better, but I think he's going to score, and I'm going to even go as far as to he's going to score from outside the box, a worldie. We've seen it before. It was against Dagenham, wasn't it? I think it'll be a very, very, very tight game. But I think a moment of magic, as we've seen so much, and people complain about this moment of magic that we're reliant on a moment of magic. I think in games like this, when you know it's going to be tight, it doesn't matter because that's what does sell a tight game. I think when you look back with rather a moment of magic away to Kings Lynn, then you can be a bit skeptical about it. But in a game like this, you take anything.
Yeah. I think you're both right in the sense that it will be tight. I think you're right that it might take a moment of magic. I think the majority, I'd love to see actually the percentage of goals where it requires either a moment of magic or capitalising on an error in the National League as a whole to score a goal. I often feel like goals at this level, the further down the leagues you go, the more likely it is going to be something that is based off of error rather than fluent pattern of play. The higher up you go, it becomes more about the pattern of play. I think it'll be 2-1. I think Notts will win 2-1. They are prone to a 2-1 defeat, Yeovil. They lost to Bromley 2-1. They lost against Sutton 2-1 recently. They lost at Hartlepool 2-1. When they do lose, they tend to lose by narrow margins, apart from at Chesterfield where they got dinged 3-0. And Notts tend to concede at home as well. Just kind of go through the notes again. They're coming on for 3/4 of the goals that Notts have conceded this season have been at Meadow Lane, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And you're right, yeah, Notts and Yeovil. Notts aren't particularly fond of playing against Yeovil. They only met once in the league last year. That one finished 3-1 at Yeovil. But they played in the FA Trophy, as you mentioned, and Notts won that 2-1. So last 2 meetings at Meadow Lane, incidentally, there were goals. Notts beaten 4-0 at Meadow Lane by Yeovil the last time the two sides met there, but beat Yeovil 4-1 at Meadow Lane the season before that, back in 2017, 2018, I should say. But yeah, I think it'll be close. I think 2-1. And Wootton will get 1, and Ellis will get another. Biased.
Yeah, I love that. So just quickly before we finish, got a few predictions coming up. So we've got a 2-2. We've got a 0-0. We've got Kian saying 2-1, Wootton and Rodriguez. And we've got a 3-0 win for Notts. Doyle, Wootton and Rawlinson. I'd love Rawlinson to get a goal because he deserves that. He's fantastic week in, week out pretty much. So I'd love to see him get a goal.
Yeah, he's as great as it comes.
So tomorrow, straight after the game, around about 5 o'clock, we are going to a live discussion. We'll be joined by Will, who's been on the fan chats, and you're probably aware of. He likened, Cal Roberts to Gareth Bale, and Bagan to Marcelo within 2 weeks of each other on the channel. Very funny guy. So he'll be live on the discussion tomorrow, straight after the game. Charlie, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure, guys. Pleasure. Hope you enjoy it.
Charlie. You too.
And we are desperately hoping for a victory against